Bright QT. Every student matters.
Hello everyone. Now students, let's start with our next topic here, that is Independent Election Commission. Now this is part A of our topic that we have already discussed, right? Our previous topic in which we were talking about the measures taken to ensure free and fair elections. Now in this part students, we already talked about the allegations that are made after every elections, right? We talked about the new term, right, rigging, the unfair means or the illegal means that are used in elections. Okay, I also gave you some examples like it, that in newspapers you must have read somewhere that this election that took place in the year 2019 or it took place in the year 2014 or so on, it was rigged. It means that unfair means or illegal means were used in the elections, right, on the day of polling or before that throughout the election procedure was taking place. Now students, apart from that, we also talked about the allegations, that different kinds of allegations that are made by the opposition parties or the parties that come to the power or the parties involved in contesting these elections. So these were some of the important points that we have talked about. But we are talking about the topic that is ensuring free and fair elections. I also told you that this is one of the features of democratic government. Now, when we are talking about democratic government, it means that we have to see that the elections, the whole idea of elections, it should be totally free. It should be fair for each and every individual. Correct or no? Yes. So here, who is going to ensure that the elections are happening in a free and fair manner? Yes. We have talked about the Election Commission of India, right? So all the time throughout this chapter, I have mentioned this term. Correct? You are aware of this term, that is Election Commission of India. When we were talking about the Model Code of Conduct, now who made those Model Code of Conduct, right? Those rules and regulations. It was under the Election Commission of India. So what is this Election Commission of India? This might be a question that can come in cut. So this might be a question that can come across your mind, right? That what is this Election Commission of India? What is its duty? And what is its role when we are talking about the election procedure or the process, right? So here, when we are referring to this Election Commission of India, it means that it is an independent body for conducting elections. So the main role of Election Commission of India, as the name suggests itself, is conducting elections. Now, not just conducting elections. Here, what is important? Conducting elections in a free and fair manner, right? To ensure that each and every individual, they are participating, and also the whole procedure, it is happening in a fair manner. No illegal means, no unfair means are being used in the elections, correct? They also enjoy same kind of independence as the judiciary. Now, have you learnt about the organs of government? Yes. If I ask you that how many organs of government are there when we are talking about our country, you will simply say that, ma'am, there are 3 organs. The first one being our legislature, the second one executive, and the third one is the judiciary. Now, when we are talking about the high courts, when we are talking about the supreme courts, when we are talking about the district courts, they all come under judiciary. Right, students? Now, here, when we are talking about the independence and the powers of judiciary, you will learn in your next chapter as well, and plus you must have read it earlier also, right, in your previous classes about the powers, the independence that the judiciary enjoys. So here, when we are referring to the Election Commission of India, they too enjoy the same kind of power, the same kind of independence at judiciary as the judiciary. Now, what kind of power are we talking about? We all know that the government cannot interfere in the decision-making process of the judiciary, of the judges, of the Supreme Court, the High Courts, District Courts, right? The lower level courts or the higher level courts that we are talking about. Now, when we are talking about the Supreme Court, that is the custodian, right? So here the most decisions when the government, they are in conflict, the state government or the central government, when they are in conflict, who is going to interpret there? Who is going to come and act as a mediator? The Supreme Court that acts as a custodian there. Correct or not, students? Yes. And here you must remember that the power or the independence that judiciary enjoys, it means that the government has no influence whatsoever to the judiciary here. So in the same way, so when we are talking about the Chief Election Commissioner or his subordinates, right? So here you have to understand that they are enjoying the same kind of independence, both judiciary and the Chief Election Commissioner. Okay? Who appoints the Chief Election Commissioner? So he is appointed by the President of India. Now there are certain terms in political science, students, that you need to understand, and you must differentiate. You must know the difference between those terms. So when I am referring to this term that is appointed, it is very much different from the term that is nominated. Okay? So here, minor difference, but here you have to understand that yes, there are differences, elected, nominated, appointed. These are certain terms, they have, minor differences when we are referring to these terms in political science. So here when we are talking about the President of India, he appoints the Chief Election Commissioner, okay? And he is enjoying the same kind of independence as judiciary. Now this is the logo here of the Election Commission of India. And who is the current Chief Election Commissioner? So his name is Sunil Arora. These are certain points that you must keep in mind here. Now let's talk about the power of Election Commission of India. Now here you must know, students, that very few election commissions in the world, they have such wide-ranging powers as the Election Commission of India. Also, the Chief Election Commissioner that I am talking about, he cannot be removed even if the government, it disagrees with the decisions or actions of the Chief Election Commissioner. So he is being appointed by the President. This is one important point that you must keep in mind. And when we are talking about the tenure of the Chief Election Commissioner, it is 6 years, okay, or 65 years when we are talking about the age. Whichever is earlier, the Chief Election Commissioner, his tenure gets over. Now coming to the main point here about the powers of the Election Commission of India. Let's have a look at these powers. So he can take decision, the Chief Election Commission of India, consisting of the Chief Election Commissioner. Apart from him, there are 2 other election commissioners, okay, that he can appoint along with the President can do that, okay. So here, let's focus on the first point. Here you have to know about the Chief Election Commissioner only. Let's not go much into detail here. So the first point here is that they can take decisions on every aspect of conduct and control of elections. Very important point here. Now, do you remember the Model Code of Conduct that we were talking about? Now, who is preparing that? Like I told you, it is the Election Commission of India that is preparing that Model Code of Conduct. That each and every political party participating or contesting in elections, apart from that, the candidates hailing from those political parties, they have to follow those Model Code of Conduct. So, all the decisions they are taking on every aspect of the conduct or the control of elections. Now, this is the main role of the Election Commission of India, okay, conducting elections. Apart from that, implement the code of conduct and punish any party or candidate for violating any rule. Yes, the second most important point here is that when we are talking about the Model Code of Conduct, now they have laid down the rules and regulations. But who is going to see that it is being implemented in a wise manner? It is the Election Commission of India that has to see over it that it is being implemented, and also they have the right and they have the power to punish any party, any political party who is not following that Model Code of Conduct, and also any candidate who is violating any rule. Violating any rule here, what does that mean? It means that if anyone is not following or not abiding by the rules and the regulations that have been laid down by the Election Commission of India, they are to be punished. Okay? Now, third point here. What is the third point? Election Commission can order the government to follow its guidelines. Yes, we all know that the government cannot influence the Election Commission of India. They are independent of this, the rules laid down by the government. So here we have to understand that the Election Commission, it has the power that it can order the government to follow the guidelines laid down by them. Okay? Now, during the period of elections, the Election Commission, they can order the government to follow all the guidelines. It can also include the transfer of government officials. This is another important point related to this point that we are talking about. Apart from that, students, we also have to understand that the government officers who are working on the election duty, now there are so many government officers who are appointed on the day of election, right? They are told to go to several places, the polling booths. They have to see that people, they are following all the guidelines there as well. Okay? So they are under the control of Election Commission and not the government. So this is the next point that you have to remember here. Now, the powers of Election Commission over the time, right? So, in the initial years when the Election Commission of India, it was formed, that time they had some limited powers. But right now, when we are talking about today's time, so we see that the powers of Election Commission of India, it has been expanding only. Okay? Now, even if the ruling party, it does not like what the Election Commission of India is deciding, what the Chief Election Commissioner is deciding, they can't question, they can't raise a question or they can fight the Election Commission of India. Whatever the Election Commission of India during the period of elections, whatever they are deciding, they have this supreme power and they can decide over the government actions as well. So here they have to follow, the government has to follow the Election Commission of India, their rules, their guidelines, their regulations that they have laid down. Also students, you have heard about the term rigging, right? In our previous topic, we already have talked about rigging. Now, if I ask you this question, what is rigging? You can now answer it very quickly that yes, it is the unfair or the illegal means that are being used in the elections. Okay. So, again, another important duty, who is ensuring that elections take place in a free and fair way? It is the Election Commission of India. So, the Election Commission of India has made the use of technology to prevent rigging. They have ensured that illegal means or unfair means should not be used in the election procedure. So, what are these technological ways through which they are going to follow or they are going to prevent the rigging? So, the first point here is voter identity cards. Now, are you aware of this term, students? Voter identity cards, when we are talking about that? Yes, in our previous topics, we already have talked about the voter identity cards. Now, cards with the voters' pictures that they have to carry on the election day. Look at this picture carefully. Do you see the voter identity cards in the hands of all the people standing there? All the women who are standing, they have certain card in their hand, right? So, this is the voter identity card here. They have their picture, they have their name, they also have their gender, the location, right, the address. So, basic information is given there on this voter identity card. So, this is one way through which they ensure that the person who is there, the name given, the picture, the name given there. So, the person who is there in that voter identity card is the person who has come to vote. Okay. So, this is one way through which they are preventing the rigging processing. Apart from that, EVMS. Use of EVMS is another way through which they have tried to prevent rigging. Now, how is it happening? So, EVMS, it means that we are talking about the electronic voting machines. So, they stop a voter from voting again and counting becomes faster without the possibility of rigging. Yes, students. Now, when we are talking about the electronic voting machines, they record the votes. Once the voter who has come inside the polling booth and he has pressed the button, it means that the EVM, the machine has recorded the vote of that particular voter, right? Now, it's just the matter of counting. So here EVMs, they stop a voter from voting again, and here the counting becomes much faster. Before this we had what system? Which system was being followed? So it was the ballot paper system. Okay. So here again this technology has prevented rigging in our country. Right, students? Correct. Start. Apart from this, no candidate is allowed to spend more than a specific time that has been set by the election commission on his or her elections. Okay. So these are certain points through which the Election Commission of India, they have ensured free and fair elections. Apart from this, students, we are also going to talk about people's participation in our next section. So till now we have understood what is this Election Commission of India. We have talked about the powers of the Election Commission of India. We have understood how they have tried, how they have used the technological means to prevent rigging, right, in the election procedure. Now in our next topic we will learn about people's participation. Thank you very much.